You know, there's been an age-long debate between the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. Now, those that seek and look at the letter of the law looks at the law as the way it's written and how and various ways of how it's interpreted. Whereas the spirit of the law, people look at the intentions of the law, the intentions behind the law. Now, laws are written for various reasons, mostly to establish order amongst people, or to keep us safe, or to keep a positive community. However, God also writes laws to help us to get closer to Him, or to remember some of the things He's done for us in our lives. Now, this particular scripture today actually speaks about this age-long debate. And it's basically Matthew 3, verses 1 through 6. And I'm going to read it. It says, Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day of doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or to destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he said to the man, hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot to kill Jesus. Again, this was a debate amongst the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Because if you look at Sabbath, now if you look at the Ten Commandments, I think it's the 8th commandment of the Ten Commandments, and it speaks to a day of rest. It speaks to, it basically talks about how Jesus worked for 6 days and rested on the 7th day. So, if you look at the intentions behind the law, it's a day for us to rest, rejuvenate, and actually worship God. That's really the intentions of that day. However, if you look at the law, it just says don't work on that day. Now, the Pharisees went there and was looking at Jesus and looking at the man, and Jesus was looking at them. So Jesus knew what they were there for. Now, so what he did was he gaslighted them. He basically pulled the man up there in front, and he said that he spoke to the critics. Now, in some of the scriptures, again in Matthew and Luke, it says the Pharisees and the teachers of religious laws. But then when he finally says he got up, he said he spoke to the critics. So it must have been more people out there that was actually looking at him and what he was going to do with that man. So then he called the man up. Now again, another thing that's interesting too is the man has no name in the scripture. Usually when I'm trying to find out a message of a particular scripture, sometimes I look at the name and look at the meaning of the name. But there's no name given to this man. The name of the man basically is the man with the withered hand, or the man with the deformed hand. So now if you look at withered or deformed, now if you look at the Greek says xeros, which means dried up, shrunken, or without water. So this could have been a man born with an underdeveloped hand, or it could have been a man with atrophy from a stroke or something. But that doesn't really matter. Really, is a man has a hand that he cannot use and function at its full capacity. So because the man has no name, a lot of times it represents all of us. How many of us out there are walking around right now withered, either psychologically, emotionally, economically, or spiritually? How many of us are walking around to the point to where we're withered, where we can't function at our fullest capacity? Another thing too, this man never asked for help. This man was being used as a pawn. He basically went to the synagogue, minding his own business, and everybody looking at him. So how many of us, again, is operating in our own witheredness and we're not asking for help? We're just basically operating in it and dealing with it. Now, what's interesting is Jesus gaslighted the critics. Again, in some scriptures it says that it was the Pharisees and the teachers of religious laws. However, when he stood up, in all his gospels, he said he stood up in front of the critics. So it must have been more people out there in that crowd that was looking at him and seeing what he's going to do with this man. So he stood up, and then he questioned him. He said, "Does this law permit good deeds on his day or evil, right? Now, we know, so it made the people of religious law and all the, and the Pharisees and all them actually having to question themselves. He made them look at themselves because they were plotting evil. They were plotting to kill Jesus. So they were plotting evil. So it wasn't so much about what he was going to do with the man. It was about making them look at themselves, right? And so what did he do? He healed the man. He just told the man, hold your hand or hold your hand out. And the man was healed and restored. Again, the law was written for rest on that day. But God used that day to actually heal a man. He used that day to do good. And in every day, rather it be the Sabbath or what, is a day to do good. So again, it wasn't about the letter of the law, it was about the spirit of the law. And if you really go deeper, he said, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. So who better can interpret the law but the author of the law? So as we look at our laws and as we go about our daily lives right now, ask yourself, what are you doing in your life? And what is the spirit of why you do things? What is your why? And instead of understanding the what. A lot of times that will help us to coexist in our lives and not be so hard on ourselves as we deal with our lives. And also ask yourself too, where are you? Is there witheredness within your own life? And are you asking for help and support from God? Are you praying about it so that you can fully function at your fullest capacity? So I'm going to end for now. And I'm going to say, if you see me, and just say you know, and then we both will. Until then, 2 fingers.